Hi there, this is Teri from stampinmagic.com. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is a Christmas card. I used the Dashing Deer bundle of products to decorate it, and I've also used the Hinge Step Stamping technique with the Stamparatus. So let's get started. My original card had a border that you could see all the way round. Now I'm going to change this for the card I'm making now, and I've cut my white cardstock the full length of the card. Now the width of my cardstock is wider than I actually need. I just thought this would be easier rather than try and stamp the images centrally on the piece of card. I can just stamp them down the card and then trim it later. I have some scrap grid paper at the bottom of my Stamparatus, and I'm going to anchor my cardstock to it using just a little bit of temporary adhesive. This will just help ensure that my cardstock doesn't move. I'm not using the corner today, I'm going to anchor it more centrally in the Stamparatus. I'm going to use this beautiful line image from the Dashing Deer stamp set, and later on I'll also use a sentiment from it. Now I'm going to put my stamp set underneath the plate on the right hand side. This just makes sure the plate is level and it makes it easier to ink up the image. And then I'm covering my cardstock with a square of window sheet or acetate that I've cut to fit the Stamparatus. I'm placing my stamp on top of that acetate and picking it up with the plate. I'm using balmy blue ink to start off with, and I'll ink up my stamp and stamp it down onto the acetate. And I just want to check here that the line image is straight, it's horizontal, it's not sort of leaning up or down. Then I'm going to ink up my stamp again and move the plate down to the bottom hinge that I'll use and stamp the image again. And all I'm doing here is checking to see that the border above the top image and the border below the bottom image look a similar distance. If any of these were wrong, or if the images didn't look straight, then I would adjust the image on the plate and try again. But I'm quite happy with how these turned out. So I'm just cleaning off my image, and then I can clean my acetate and remove it from the Stamparatus base. I'm just adding my magnet so everything is anchored down, and then I can ink up my stamp again and start stamping onto my cardstock. And I'm going to continue inking up the stamp, moving it down one hinge and then stamping the image. And I'll do this until I reach the bottom of the cardstock. Then I'm going to clean my stamp again, ready for the next colour. I'm going to place my window sheet back onto the Stamparatus, covering that cardstock, and anchor it with my magnet. And then I'm going to reposition the stamp, and this time I want it between the two balmy blue images. I want to stamp a Highland Heather image. So I'm inking up my stamp, and I'm just going to check the placement. And this time I wasn't happy with it. On the centre of the stamp there's a little image that I wanted to be lined up all the way down the cardstock, but it wasn't quite right. So I'm just working out which way I need to move the stamp, and I'm adjusting it slightly. And then I'm going to clean off that acetate, ink up my stamp again, and just check it for a second time. And again, I wasn't too happy with the position, so I'm going to repeat that process until I'm happy with the placement. So I'm just working out again which way to move the stamp. Adjusting it very slightly, and then clean off my acetate and dry it, and try for the third time. And in this case it was third time lucky. So it may not have been perfect, but I was quite happy with the placement. Now I can remove the acetate and start to stamp down the cardstock. And again, I stamp once, I re-ink, and then I move down the hinge, just one step at a time. And that's it, the panel's finished. So I'll just clean off my stamp and then remove it from the Stamparatus. Next, I'm going to trim down the panel to the size I want, and I'm just leaving a slight white edge before and after the stamped images that are probably only about 1 millimeter on each end. And this is my completed panel. Now looking at each end of this, I can see I've got more white space on one end than the other, but I'm not going to worry about it. I think if I do this project again, what I would do is stamp on a piece longer than I actually need, in the same way I did with the width, and then cut it to size when I finish. For the sentiment, I'm going to use balmy blue ink again, and I have a small piece of our normal weight Whisper White cardstock. I'm just going to stamp the sentiment, and then I'm going to cut this out using one of the Merry Christmas Thinlet dies. I'm also going to use the same die to cut out a piece of glimmer paper. I also have another piece of glimmer paper, and I'm going to take one of the deer from the Detailed Deer Thinlets dies and cut that. Now this glimmer paper has been backed already with some of our multi-purpose adhesive sheet. Now I have some more of our Whisper White cardstock here, and I'm going to use this for backing the deer to make it dimensional. I've got 4 layers of white deer underneath the glimmer deer. So I'm going to cut 4 more from this white piece, and again this is already backed with some of our multi-purpose adhesive sheet, so it'll make it very easy to stack them. Okay, here are all the pieces after they've been cut with the Big Shot. Now the little glimmer paper piece that I cut with the Merry Christmas Thinlits die, I'm going to cut in half lengthways. I want to use this to back the sentiment panel. I'm going to attach the glimmer paper using glue dots. Now attaching anything to glimmer paper is always difficult, so I found the best glue is a glue dot. So I'm going to add just a couple on each end, and then I can position my sentiment panel onto one of the pieces of glimmer paper. And I just want to have that border at the top and the bottom of the sentiment. Then I can add a few dimensionals onto the back. Now I'm going to start stacking all the deer on top of each other, and I'm going to start with the white ones. The multi-purpose adhesive sheet backing comes off quite easily. Just be careful when you pull it away from the antlers. Now stacking these deer is also quite easy. Generally I start by matching up the nose and the front of the body, and then you'll find that the rest of it sort of falls in line on its own, so it's just a case of carefully pressing them together. So again, I'm matching up that nose and the front of the body, and then just pressing them together, making sure the legs are aligned and the antlers. Once all the white deer have been stacked together, you can then add the silver glimmer deer on top. I can now start to put the card together. I have a card base in balmy blue, and then I have a white mat to go inside the card. I'm going to decorate the white mat with a strip of white cardstock that I've already stamped. I'm going to add this to a strip of balmy blue and then cut it down to the size I want. The completed strip can then be added to the bottom of the white mat before it's glued to the inside of the card base. For the front of the card, I have a Highland Heather mat and a balmy blue mat, and I'm going to layer these all together. I have 2 narrow strips of the silver glimmer paper. Now before I cut these, I did back the glimmer with more multi-purpose adhesive sheet. Now these are about 1/8 of an inch wide, which is 3 millimeters. And I'm going to add these above and below the top and bottom edges of that balmy blue mat. Then I can add this completed panel to the front of my card base. I'm removing the backings from the dimensionals, and then I'm going to position the sentiment towards the bottom right hand corner. And then I can remove the final backing of the multipurpose adhesive sheet on the reverse of the deer and position that onto the front of the card. And finally, here is my completed card. And my original one. I definitely prefer the newer one. I like that it hasn't got a border all the way round. I think it looks much better. Which one do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.